Bonjour and good morning. Welcome to WASA Distance Education Center and PLAR History. So today is Thursday and it's September 26th. Again, this is our last week for, well, actually not the last week of September. On Monday, September 30th. Just a reminder that WASA will be closed on Monday. We will be observing Truth and Reconciliation Day. So again, the WASA office in Sioux Lookout will be closed on Monday, September 30th. So Thursday, September 26th, a couple of announcements. Just a reminder that we are still accepting applications for the 2024-25 school year. You can call us at WASA at 807-737-1488, or you can talk to your local distance education coordinator. Specifically for students applying for PLAR or reapplying for PLAR, you may contact Candace, or if you're working on your senior courses, you can contact Michelle. She's our education counselor. There will be application draws for students who register, as well as for DECs who are registering students. We will keep you posted regarding the prizes that we will be giving. We will also continue to do end-of-term draws for students who submit work during each term. So remember, terms 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. So every time you submit work, you will have your name put into the draw, as well as when you earn a credit, your name will also go into a different draw. Today, there is a SLAM's annual career fair. It will be on from, it started this morning from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. It is at the Sioux North High School gym. So all are welcome. There are various booth displays by businesses and employers. You have free admission, free lunch, free draws. For job seekers, you can bring your resume. WASA also has a booth there. Bonnie and I will be there from noon till 2. So again, you can check us out there at the SLAM Career Fair. It will be at the Sioux North High School gym. You can still sign up for the 2024-25 academic school year. So check that out. Come say hello and register. If you can't make it there and you would like to sign up, again, you can call us or you can use our online application form. You just need an email address to input so that you can start signing or applying for a course. If you don't have a phone number, or if you don't have your status card handy, just put in 10 digits for that one. So put zeros and the form will accept it. Again, if you have applied with us before, we have that information. If you don't have a phone number, do the same thing. Put in the 10-digit zeros and the form will accept that as well. You can't leave it blank. If you leave it blank, it will not finish the process. And if you're still unsure about trying the culminating instead of the key questions, feel free to ask for a sample test to review the format of the culminating activity. You can contact me or you can contact Bonnie. So this is for students that are still not sure whether they want to try the key questions or they just want to challenge the test, because now you have the option to write the PLAR tests instead of completing the lessons. Those of you who pass the test, you will be granted your missing equivalent credits. So remember, the junior PLAR, you're missing grade 9, 10 equivalent credits, or grade 9, 10 credits. So if you do the junior PLAR, you will now receive your 9, 10 equivalent credits. Students who are not successful, you have to complete the lessons before attempting the tests again. So it doesn't hurt if you do try the test. DECs will need to inform currently registered PLAR students about this change, and new PLAR students will also be informed about the new changes during the application process. Remember, there are 5 culminating activities that are available. There's the PLAR English, Math, History, Geography, and Science. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to do them all. Depending on which grade 9, 10 credits that you are missing, then it will depend on which culminating activity you must complete. So this is what the sample looks like for the history assessment. You read the information that's given to you. So it says here, read this article and answer the questions that follow it, and then you will be asked to answer the following questions. The questions for the culminating, so for history, geography, science, these are typically hand questions. And what I mean by that is when you're looking for the answer, you can put your hand or your finger on the answer. Here's an example. It says some causes of the Great Depression. The Great Depression of the 1930s began with the New York stock market crash in October 1929. No one knows exactly why the stock market crashed when it did. The first question says, when did the New York stock market crash? I can put my hand or my finger right on the answer. The Great Depression of the 1930s began with the New York stock market crash in October 1929. So if you're not sure and you need the PLAR history, try the PLAR history culminating first. And if you have any questions, make sure you contact me. For those students that have decided they will do the key questions, a reminder that all PLAR packages are the same. So if you register through radio, through Zoom or IL, the packages will be the same for all 3 formats. So PLAR students, you can continue where you left off. So if you were working on your PLAR history lesson 2 from last year, pick up from lesson 2. You can ask for the new lessons. So if you finish PLAR history lesson 1 and key questions and you have submitted those key questions to me, that's fine. You can continue with the new version of the PLAR history lesson 2 and 3. Looking at the cover pages for the study guide, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, you will notice that on the cover pages the WASA studio number is there. So if you want to call the WASA studio, the number is provided for you. If you want to listen to us on the radio, locally it's 91.9 FM. Television, if you have Bell Express View, we're on channel 972. My Zoom link is there, my meeting ID, my passcode, the office number. If you want to call me, there's a toll-free number. My extension is 2204. We have a fax number. My email is there. Both my Facebook and my YouTube have the same profile name. It's J. Mercer Wassa. And then of course we have the Google Classroom code, and you have 2 different codes, one for the NNEC schools if you have an NNEC schools account, or if you already have a personal account, then you would use that classroom code. You can also tune in or watch our broadcasts on YouTube. So the PLAR Science and the PLAR History Geography videos or classes are available on YouTube. I have provided you with the link on my Facebook, or you can search me on YouTube. Just type in J. Mercer Wassa. On the playlist you will see PLAR Science, PLAR Geography, and PLAR History. So if you're working on any of those, or you want to review for your culminating, you can check out those videos. If you don't have internet or Wi-Fi, you can request a USB of classes. You will just need a USB port to put the flash drive in. When you're opening the lesson, make sure that you're checking out, okay, which one did you request. So if it's the PLAR history, then you would open the PLAR history. If it's the PLAR geography or the PLAR science, then you would open those folders. The classes are named by subject, so in this case it's PLAR history, then by lesson, then by key questions. So if you're having problems with key questions 13 to 15, you would open PLAR history lesson 1, key questions 12 to 18, because in that class I will be talking about those key questions. If you're having problems with your NNEC Schools email, for example, if you forget your password, let me know, I can reset it. Or if you're having problems trying to get into your NNEC Schools email, I'm able to activate it if you'd like. Once you're ready to submit either your key questions or your culminating, there are several ways for you to submit them to me. You can scan your work. So you can use your iPhone Notes app. You can email or you can send it through Messenger to me. Most popular way is taking a picture and sending it through Facebook Messenger. 2 ways to do it. You can scan the pages or you can simply just take a picture of it. Whichever is easiest for you. So again, if you prefer to email it, make sure you send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca and then CC it to the teacher that's marking your work. Another option is just sharing it with the teacher by clicking the share button. That will unlock that document. So the documents that you make or create on Google Sheets or Docs, that's private only to you until you unlock that share button, and then you will put in your teacher's email and then it will share it. If you're working on your key questions or culminating at the Learning Center, you can ask your DEC to scan or fax it for you, or you can drop it off here at WASA. We're on 74 Front Street, right beside the post office. We also have a mailbox that's available. Just make sure you put your name on your work so we know who it came from. We're finishing up lesson 2. So this is history, the Second World War and after the war. And I think we might have time to start with lesson 3. And that's Canada 1960 to 2000. So we'll see how it goes. From our last class, we finished up to, let me just look at the last key question that we completed. We finished with key question 31. Why did First Nations people object to the white paper? So we only have a couple more questions left to do for lesson 2. So in lesson 1 to 18, key questions, that's completed. And then 19 to 31 so far in lesson 2. And 2 more questions left, key questions 32 to 33 is what we have left to complete. So in lesson 2, if you're following along in your book, we are looking at the Quiet Revolution on page 15. Okay, the learning goals. So the last learning goal that we are looking at is I can explain the historical importance of Quebec's Quiet Revolution. Lesson 3 deals with Canada 1980 to the present. This is where we will look at the Canada Act and the Meech Lake Accord, free trade, Canadian women in politics, and perhaps the Oka crisis on pages 8 to 9. Learning goals for Lesson 3. I can describe Canada's economic history since the 1980s. I can explain the impact of 9/11 on Canada, and I can identify significant political contributions of Canadian women. On page 15, so the heading says Canada 1960 to 1980, and it says Quebec. So we're looking particularly at that province. So French speaking and English speaking Canadians disagreed about Canada, whether it's about politics or economy. So a little bit of background. Since the earliest days of Canadian history, French speaking and English speaking Canadians have frequently disagreed on how the country should be governed. So they're not in agreement. Also, what defines the Canadian economy? So many Quebecois believe that the best solution for Quebec would be to separate from Canada and become their own nation, so become independent. So you can see on the top, those are the main points. Quebecois separate from the rest of Canada. As we have seen from our earlier lessons, or lesson 1, the conscription crisis during both world wars fueled this discontent. If you recall, Quebec did not feel it was their war. They felt it was Britain's war and that they should not be fighting. So many in Quebec feel that their political perspectives differ significantly from those of the rest of Canada. If you look up on the top, again, conscription crisis in World War I and II, they were discontent about that, and the political views were different between the French-speaking and English-speaking Canadians. Here's the map of Canada. Notice where Quebec is located. Okay, right between the Maritimes and Ontario. Continuing on page 15, the Quiet Revolution. So during this time, the Quebec people, they elected Maurice Duplessis and his new party, the Union Nationale. So Duplessis aimed to improve Quebec's position and protect its interest. So after his death in 1959, the Quiet Revolution began. So it lasted from 1960 to 1966. So during this time or this period, it brought a significant shift in how Quebecois viewed themselves and their relationship with Canada. So the Quiet Revolution, and notice the word quiet is in quotation. This was achieved through media, meaning magazines and newspapers, and changes in political legislation. It wasn't through violence, so no guns or violence involved. Quebec's people sought to protect and promote their French culture. Quebec was larger than most modern nations. It had its own wealth. It had its own natural resources and agriculture. Quebec also felt that they had distinct borders, culture, language, and people, which led many to believe they should have the right to vote if they want to leave Canada. Many Quebecois felt socially, culturally, politically, and economically discriminated against. So these factors, this made it even more desirable for them to become an independent nation. So in 1965, the Canadian government introduced the Canadian flag as a unifying symbol for the country. Pictures on the bottom that shows Duplessis of the Union Nationale. So he blamed the existence of the Depression on the fact that many of Quebec's industries were owned by Americans and English-speaking Canadians. That's why he formed the Union Nationale, because he wanted more control over their economy. Many French Canadians also felt that their language and culture might disappear. They were tired of feeling like second-class citizens in their own country. Most started to think that Quebec should secede. That means be independent from Canada. So what were the policies of the Quiet Revolution? So there's a picture of Jean Lesage. He was the liberal leader in Quebec, and his motto, or his liberals' motto, was time for change. When he was elected in 1960, he began the Quiet Revolution. He wanted to stop the corruption in government, awarded positions according to who earned them, raised wages and pensions, and lifted restrictions on unions. So under his government, the economy, politics, education and culture, science and technology courses, which were previously were now under Duplessis, were now mandatory, and the Roman Catholic Church importance declined a lot. So what did he do? He facilitated access to loans for Francophones. That means they could get loans so that they could start their own businesses. He also created a Department of Education. He changed the curriculum for Quebec students. He made high school free. He also introduced what is called the Cégep system, and that meant that he replaced classical colleges, and it allowed students to focus more on technical and business courses. So you can see a picture down below. This one of the Cégep at St. Hyacinthe. So those were some of the changes that he made. However, there was a move toward independence and the FLQ. So Francophones began to feel a growing sense of pride. Some started to see their struggles with English Canadians as similar to those of other colonies fighting for independence. On July 24th, 1967, the French President, Charles de Gaulle, gave them a boost. He shouted, "Long live free Quebec." So this was during a speech in Montreal. He was at the Expo 1967. This, of course, angered Prime Minister Pearson, but it encouraged Quebecois to continue their fight for their cause. So there's the picture of the 1967 International and Universal Exposition, or Expo 67. It's the World Fair held in Montreal, Quebec. It was held there from April 27th to October 29th. It is considered to be the most successful World's Fair of the 20th century, with the most attendees to that date and 62 nations participating. So imagine all the participants heard his speech. It also set the single-day attendance record for a World's Fair. So his speech encouraged French nationalism, but it also made English Canadians mad. Next up, the FLQ. So in the 60s, some Quebecois formed a group called the Front de Libération de Québec, or the Quebec Liberation Front. The FLQ were terrorists. Remember, it was supposed to be a quiet revolution Well, the FLQ believed that violence was the only way to achieve Quebec's independence. So what did this group do? Well, they carried out bombings and they kidnapped government officials, including the British Trade Minister to Canada and Quebec's Minister of Labour. In 1970, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau used the War Measures Act. So this act allowed police to arrest FLQ members without charges. The next day, the Minister of Labour was found dead in the trunk of a car. The War Measures Act, this is a federal law, so it was passed way back on August 22nd, 1914. So this act gave the federal government broad powers to maintain security and order during war, invasion, or insurrection. So here's some pictures of, this is from the Ottawa Journal. This is the War Measures Act invoked. So police were to arrest those who were suspected of belonging to the FLQ, or if they supported the FLQ through literature, posters, stickers, or pamphlets. This particular War Measures Act outlawed FLQ. It suspended civil liberties in Quebec. 497 people were arrested, of whom 435 would be released, and the other 62 were charged. So the War Measures Act, we also have that. It's called the Emergencies Act. This one became law in 1988. It is a federal law that can be used by the federal government in the event of a national emergency. Now, a national emergency means it's a serious temporary situation that puts the health and safety of Canadians at risk or threatens Canada's ability to protect its independence, security, and borders. It must be a situation that provinces and territories or existing Canadian laws cannot handle on their own. So you can't just say, oh, we'll have a Canada's Emergencies Act. There are 4 types of emergencies that can be declared under the Emergencies Act. It has to be 1, a public welfare emergency, or a public order emergency, an international emergency, or a war emergency. The last time the Emergencies Act was last used was in Canada in February 2022 during the Freedom Convoy protests. So these protests began as a reaction to COVID-19 vaccine rules for truck drivers crossing the border. Okay, but soon this is expanded into larger demonstrations against public health measures and the government. So that was the last time that the Emergencies Act was last used in Canada. Protesters blocked streets in Ottawa, several border crossings, causing disruptions to daily life and trade. Okay, so you may or may not remember that or have seen it. Now we can finish with lesson 2 by doing key questions 32 to 33. So key question 32. You can see that there are 2 parts, 32.1 and 32.2. The first one says provide specific details to describe the Quiet Revolution. So what I'm asking for you to do here is to describe it. Tell me what it's about. Tell me about the Quiet Revolution, including why the revolution became necessary to the people of Quebec. Why did Quebec want, or why did Quebec felt that this was necessary to them? So make sure you describe it. So specific details, and then why was it necessary? The second part of that question tells you What did Jean Lesage do in support of this revolution? So you can say Jean Lesage supported this revolution by, and you tell me, what were some of the things that he did that tells us he supported what Quebec wanted? And finally, key question 33. What does the term FLQ stand for? That's the first part. And how did this organization pursue their goals? So FLQ stands for, so remember that's an acronym, F, L, and Q stands for, tell me what it means. How did this organization pursue their goals? So this group, so remember they also wanted or felt that the revolution was necessary for the people of Quebec, but how was theirs different from the Quiet Revolution? So they pursued their goals by, and then tell me. And that's the end of lesson 2. So we are now moving on to lesson 3. So lesson 3, the Canada Act and the Meech Lake Accord, beginning on page 4. We will also look at free trade, Canadian women in politics, and the Oka crisis. And those are on pages 8 to 9. So think about what you will learn in this lesson. You will be able to describe Canada's economic history since the 80s, explain the impact of 9/11 on Canada, and you should be able to identify significant political contributions of Canadian women. So here's the introduction. In the 80s, Canadians gained full control over the Constitution. That meant that Canada had more independence. Since then, Canada has formed important trade agreements with other nations. In the 21st century, Canada has both influenced and had been affected by major global events. So for example, the September 11th terrorist attacks in 2001, that impacted Canada's foreign policy. Additionally, Canada also has begun working to improve its relations with Indigenous peoples, with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission being one example of these efforts. Okay, so turn to, sure I have the same page as you. Okay, turn to page 4. So the Canada Act and the Meech Lake Accord. So this is the heading that you will see in your book. It's exactly like that. The words may not be the same. When Canada became a country at Confederation, its constitution was still under the control of the British government. Remember, Canada was colonized, or was a colony of Britain. But over time, Britain gave Canada more control over its own laws. However, by 1980, only the British Parliament could make changes to Canada's constitution. So what is the Canada Act, or what was it? On April 17th, 1982, the Constitution Act was signed. This gave Canada full control over its realm, or its constitution, its own laws. Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau initiated the act, which included the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. At that time, Queen Elizabeth II still retains some political power in Canada, but the country itself has full sovereignty. All provinces So again, this comes up. All provinces except Quebec supported the act, so that means they disagreed with it. They opposed it because they feared that the loss of its distinct identity and become just another province. So the Charter of Rights that was initiated by Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau was popular in English Canada, but it was unpopular in Quebec. As a result, Quebec to this day remains the only province that has not signed the Canadian Constitution. You can see a picture on the bottom of the slide. There's the Prime Minister and our former Queen there. That was signed in 1982. That was the last step to making Canada a completely independent nation. So as the rest of the country celebrated, flags flew at half-mast in Quebec. L'évêque led angry demonstration in Quebec City. Okay, that's how angry they were. They didn't want that. There's a picture of the Calgary Herald, and notice there's René Lévesque. He was quoted as saying, "Quebec belongs to us." So that's an example of a primary source that was taken April 16th, 1982. In 1984, Brian Mulroney became Prime Minister. To reach an agreement that would satisfy Quebec, the Meech Lake Accord was created. Okay, he wanted to please Quebec, so he said, well, let's do the Meech Lake Accord. This accord recognized Quebec as a distinct society. However, many First Nations expressed concerns that they had not been consulted. Okay, no one asked them. So they felt their rights were being overlooked. They questioned why Quebec was being recognized a distinct society while they were not. So here are some key points about the Meech Lake Accord. In order to pass the Meech Lake Accord, approval from all provinces was required. You can't just have 3 or 4, it has to be all the provinces. They have to approve it. In Manitoba, Elijah Harper, he was a Cree member of the Manitoba Parliament from Red Sucker Lake First Nation. He refused to give his consent. Harper opposed the accord because First Nations had not been consulted, or they were not even recognized in the negotiations. Okay, they were left out of it. As the deadline for signing the accord neared, Harper stood in the Manitoba legislature holding an eagle feather and refused to give his approval. His refusal meant that the Meech Lake Accord could not be passed. So as a result, you have growth in Quebec separatism. They felt that English Canada did not understand them. They felt that independence was necessary as a means of protecting the future of the French language and culture. So again, the tension was already there earlier. Now the tension has become larger. So the tension between collective and individual rights increased. Canadians were upset too due to the general lack of public consultation. In retaliation, the Quebec government passed Bill 178 in 1989, and that bill banned the usage of English on all outdoor signs. That meant that if you saw signs in Quebec, they would all be in French. Many Canadians believed that the Meech Lake Accord would be used by future Quebec governments to infringe on linguistic minorities. The Quebecers also saw rejection as a humiliation. So by 1990, support for separation rose to 64%. That they want to separate. So this was different from the previous referendum that was held May 20th, 1980, 60% said no to separation, 40% said yes. And then notice now for 1990, the support for separation rose to 64%. So you have two provinces, Manitoba and Newfoundland. They withheld their support for the Meech Lake Accord, and that's why it was not passed. That was in June 1990. Okay, let's try some key questions. And let me just open up key questions for lesson 3. So begins with key question number 34. So the page here looks the same as, or similar to yours. It will tell you that it's the PLAR history, lesson 3. It will indicate the key questions 34 to 41. I want you to send only pages 18 to 20 of lesson 3 for marking. That means you do not send me the whole lesson. I'll only be marking pages 18 to 20 of lesson 3. And again, when answering the questions, use what I have provided to you along with your own knowledge and experience. There is no need for you to look up or search on the internet, so don't use your internet or Wi-Fi to look up answers. So it shows you, again, this is good as a checklist. It shows you the lesson, the topics, the key questions, and the total marks. The support questions are there for practice only. Answers are at the end of this lesson. That means you do not submit them to me for marking. And it gives you a reminder how you will send your key questions. Fax, you can fax it, email it, or take a picture and send it through Messenger. Use your teacher comment marks to student as your checklist to make sure that you are completing. Try to complete each of the key questions or attempt it. If you're having problems with any of them, make sure that you contact me. So the first key question we will look at in lesson 3 is, when was the Canada Act signed and what did this act do for Canada? So you can start off with the Canada Act was signed. Right at the top of the sheet it says, answer the following questions in complete sentences for full marks. So don't just write the date, write your response in a complete sentence. So the Canada Act was signed on, and then tell me, second part of the question, what did this act do for Canada? So the Canada Act gave, and then tell me. Key question 35 says, why was Elijah Harper opposed to the Meech Lake Accord? This means, why did he not want it? So opposed, you can say didn't agree. That's another word you can use. So Elijah Harper disagreed with the Meech Lake Accord, and you tell me why. So remember, if you're looking for the answers, make sure you're reading the right headings. So in this case, It's the Meech Lake Accord, so you would read on page 4. On the heading on page 4 it says the Canada Act and the Meech Lake Accord. Okay, when we come back on Tuesday, we will start with page 5, free trade. And just a reminder to everyone that Bonnie and I will be attending the SLAM Career Fair at Sioux North High School gym. So make sure that you come and visit us and sign up for the school year. There's prizes available, and again, the career fair is sponsored by SLAM. It's free admission, there's free lunch, there's free draws, so come on down and join us. Okay, so I'm going to leave a little bit early this morning so that I could go there. So I hope to see you there. And that's it, and have a good weekend. Miigwech.